infographics in the description box. I will leave all of the links to the infographics that I've created today for you guys in the description. Oh my god.
Get that you got the shoe. Get that you got that you got the shoe. Get that.
All right, so let's take a look at this infographic I put together for us, the housing resource breakdown. To be honest, the last video I put together, I was up till 3 a.m. and like, I think I finished recording at 2 a.m. and I knew that I still had to get into the editing and I had to make a couple infographics to like overlay what I was talking about. And by the time I got finished editing and chopping everything up, I was like, I'm just way too tired. So it was such a half-assed effort and I apologize. When I woke up today with a little bit of, I only got a little bit of sleep, but you know, re-energized, invigorated to kind of just really go ham on the infographic. I really want to put together something super nice and slick, just to give you a better visual and just a representation of what to expect, as well as a better way of just explaining everything a little bit more in detail, right? So the housing resource breakdown. Like I said in my previous video, there's 7 buildings you have to build and 7 main resources we're using to upgrade those buildings. The first building we're going to be upgrading is the tenant's house, which is like the residence, and that's going to use fine wood and hard rock. You'll also notice that the cost to change host is 1,000 gems. So if you make a mistake and you put in the wrong hero there and you confirm that, it is going to cost you. So please be careful when selecting your first host. The first one is free, but every single time you want to rotate to another host, that will cost you 1,000 gems. That is no joke. That will add up super quick. So make sure you choose the right host. The next building is location 1 in the bottom left there. And in that location, we're using wood. Location 2 is using rock. Location 3 is iron ignite. Location 4 is fluorite. Fine wood for the HP building, as well as hard rock for the attack building. So those are the 7 different buildings that all have 7 unique resources that get used to upgrade them. Also worth noting in the bottom right there, all 6 of those buildings at the bottom are going to be using toolboxes. So where do you get all of these resources? Well, if you take at the top right there, shout out to Typical, he put all that stuff together. This is a list that is sorted from rarest on the very top going down to the most common. So if you start at the bottom, they're really super easy to source. You can find them in a lot of content. As you go up that list, they're going to be harder and harder to find, which means as you start completing the end game PvE content, you'll get access to more and more of those resources. If you notice, fluorite, fine wood, those things are at the top of the list, and you have to get the Sealand 21 plus, which we will have access to this week, Void Corruption 100 plus, which is a little bit harder, and Vanquisher planets. That is super duper hard. So that is really end game content, and that is how you're going to be unlocking some of these other locations. So we'll get a bit more into that when we look at the other infographics, but suffice to say that the rare resources are going to bottleneck you from building these locations. So don't expect to jump in here and just build all the locations out and put in all these tenants and just make your sword flash super duper strong and you're just going to destroy all the content. That's most likely not going to happen. You might still destroy the content because sword flash is busted and some of the tenants might be strong enough to boost her, but again, don't expect to build everything on day 1. Underneath all those locations, we have the cost of the gems to build those locations. This is a one-time cost. You just pay it once, you build the building, and you're done. There's no refresh fees or nothing like that. It's just it's once and done, and we're good. So you see there that each one of those locations costs 500 gems, and then the HP building and the attack building both cost 1,000, totaling 2,000. And if you combine that with the 4,000 from the other part that I mentioned earlier, which is the gallery, each one of those costing 1,000, that is how you get the 8,000 cost for this expansion. So when it drops, we're gonna have to have at least 8,000 to buy everything at once. Maybe you don't need to build all of them, so you might be able to save a couple thousand here or there. So that is just something I want to include in the infographic because there is a cost. These aren't free to build. If we take a look at the material locations, I won't go into detail too much and read it all out because I did do that in my previous video, but I just want to mention what these short forms are. So SL21 just stands for Sealand, Sealand 21 plus. VC 101 plus means Void Corruption 101 plus, and that's in a Realms Gate, so you got to get your Void Corruption all the way up past 100 for that. You also have VQ, that just stands for Vanquisher, and last we have TOD, which stands for Tower of Dreams. If you've completed the regular tower, then you can get into the Tower of Dreams, where you have the 15 floors, and then you get the 5 nightmare rooms. So a lot of the resources come either from the floors or the nightmares. You got to remember that these heroes are going to have to be used for all the PvE content that's coming out and is currently out, as well as future content. So you want to find these homeowners that have great synergies, not only with the general meta in the game, but also with this chart. Because again, DH Games, and I'm not a big fan of this, but DH Games is forcing our hand by only giving us 1 or 2, or in some cases 3 options to select for the tenants. So you really have to pick and choose your shots, and you really got to pay attention to when new heroes get released. Do they update this chart? What heroes do I have access to? Do those heroes that I have access to from my tenants, are they even meta heroes? And if they're not meta heroes, do they have great stats that maybe I can kind of use to boost my main homeowner? So these are a bunch of crazy questions that have to be asked continually as new heroes come out. And it'll be very interesting to see how the meta will shift for as far as hero and account progression goes, because I feel that this is going to have a huge impact on how people are going to be deciding what heroes to build, what heroes to grab copies of. A lot of those things will be influenced now through this locations with the tenants and that homeowner synergy. So before we hop off this transcendent infograph, I just want to mention that when you build out these heroes and you start clearing the end game content or getting resources that allow you to upgrade these locations a little further, you want to pay close attention to location 4, specifically when you're looking at the homeowners that are transcendent, because you'll see that as we open up this expansion and we get access to it, we're immediately going to be able to upgrade location 2. A lot of people that have any 2 of those transcendent heroes are most likely going to be able to find a pair to upgrade that building. So it's pretty much a no-brainer. You just full send in location 2. But the other location you have access to will be when you have your 3rd transcendent hero, as well as resources to upgrade that location. So location 4 ends up being very, very sought after because you get access to even more stats for your main homeowner. So for the example of Sword Flash, I have a Sword Flash, I make her the homeowner, I open up location 2, I start upgrading location 2, and then I get all the stats from Queen pretty much being buffed on to the Sword Flash. And then as time progresses and I get into Vanquisher, start farming a couple Vanquisher planets, I get into Seal Land maybe 22, get a little more of those resources, maybe I get to Void Corruption 100 finally, start farming that stuff. These resources will slowly start trickling in, and those resources will allow you to start upgrading location 4. And if I was to build an Asmodel, I certainly want to put him in location 4, because then I can start funneling resources from, or not resources, but I can start taking the buffs from Asmodel and start slapping those on Sword Flash. And if that allows him to clear more content to get more resources, that's all upside, right? It remains to be seen what the strategy will actually be when it all plays out, because there's something to be said about opening up another residence. So it's not something I've talked about before, but as I currently understand and as I've been told, when you use a hero as either a tenant or a homeowner, you can't use them in another residence as a host or a tenant. So let me explain a little bit more in detail. As an example, I will use Sword Flash again. I choose Sword Flash as my main host, and then I choose Queen and location 2 as my tenant. And then I upgrade my actual residence, the building that the Sword Flash is in, which gives me access to build another residence on the same plot. So then I get another residence building, which means I get to decide another host. I can't use Sword Flash and I can't use Queen. So in that situation, I'm not too sure if I'm supposed to just wait for that Asmodel that gets built out and make him the host. Time will tell which one is the better strategy. Maybe for specific content, you want 2 like decently strong transcendent heroes, or maybe the content calls for a really, really strong Sword Flash. We won't know until we actually get to test it out, but it's something to keep in mind. There is a limit to how you can use your transcendent heroes and how they can buff each other, but this rule stands for all heroes, not just transcendent heroes. If you use a hero as a host, you won't be able to use them on another plot of land for another role, such as a tenant or a host. So that should pretty much give you a rough idea of how the homeowners work, how the tenants work, the resources, a little bit of strategy looking forward, planning becoming a lot more prevalent in the game. I mean, planning has always been a cornerstone in this game. The more you plan, usually the more you get rewarded. But again, you need to plan around this homeowner tenant situation now, right? Because DH Games has laid out kind of the path, right, of where we're supposed to be going as far as count progression goes. You kind of got to follow that path, and you can't stray too far. You can't really afford to build these like niche heroes that aren't on this list, unfortunately, unless you're just doing something completely memey, which is totally fine. I mean, you do you. If that's how you enjoy the game, that's totally fine. But if you're trying to min max and trying to complete end game content and make progress continually, making your heroes stronger, it just makes sense that you have to follow this kind of tech tree, build the host, find the tenants, build the tenants, upgrade the tenants, make the host stronger, clear more content, right? That's pretty much the progression cycle of what's going to happen. If we take a look at these other factions, you'll see that the older heroes actually have access to more options. The only issue is that the options aren't that great, right? Like when you look at heroes like Unimax, for instance, you see that like location 1 is like ODO1, Emily, and Sigmund. Like no one's building those heroes, right? So I think they really missed the mark when it comes to the older heroes. And it's something that I think people often mention. It's these old heroes that they have the tools now to repurpose them. When they first released the Void Enable system, I was so excited to see them like kind of retro void a lot of the heroes that didn't get it initially, and we're getting a release this week if I'm not mistaken. And these old heroes that kind of get this like breath of fresh air, I really kind of wish that the devs would kind of go above and beyond a little, like kind of overtune them, because that way their relevance is almost revitalized even for a brief moment in time. And I think that would be exciting in the game, kind of like to mess up the meta or maybe shift it a little bit. Again, most people are paying for a lot of progress in this game, and you don't really want to see an old hero that you kind of like, you know, regressed or swapped come back into the meta and kind of be oppressive. I understand that that's definitely something that DH Games wants to avoid. But when it comes to actual gameplay and the side of me that wants to test things and maybe clear new content, specifically PvE with old heroes that just get a little bit more buffed, I really would appreciate that. I know that's probably not gonna happen, but again, these heroes, again, like Unimax is a great example, like Bleaker and Flame Strike and like Honor Guard, like really, like that's the options we have. So if I had a Unimax as my first E5 and I really liked Unimax and the update drops, you're pretty much telling me, DH Games, that I gotta build out of that pool, like location 1, location 2. Like look at those heroes. I don't build any of those heroes. Oh, and then to build heroes that actually have stats, I gotta go to end game content with my Unimax that's being boosted by Flame Strike to like use the Asmodel and the Penny. Like come on, dog, come on, man. Right? It's really unfortunate. I really hope that they listen to feedback and they take a look at what heroes are being built and all that data, because they have access to all that, right? And what heroes are being used. Is it becoming too samey? Are people like still innovating even though there is this restriction of what heroes you can use? And I'd be very happy to see people come up with these very interesting builds where they are kind of hyper focusing these non-meta heroes but boosting them by building even more non-meta heroes and then kind of clearing content, right? I think that'd be super exciting. Again, like the Lord Balrog stuff we've been testing, just quirky stuff like that. I think it's just really fun to have in the game. It's super exciting. It's kind of like against the grain, outside the box. With that said, I will leave all of the infographics, the links to them, in the description box down below. If you do enjoy this content and you are excited for this new CLAN 20 meta and all this cool stuff we get to do with the tenant and the homeowner, leave a like, a comment, a subscribe. All that stuff helps. We're still growing the channel. I appreciate all the wonderful comments, good and bad. Thank you so much for checking out my video, and we will see you in the next one. Peace.